Yeah, 100%. And going back over the last 18, 24 months or so, we've correctly anticipated a lot of the macro events. We've been pretty close to, pretty accurate. However, what has caught me by surprise, I shouldn't say by surprise, but what's surprising is silver and gold's lackluster performance in this inflationary environment. And I think what's happening is the general market participants are acknowledging inflation right now, but they still have faith in the Fed. And when they expect the Fed to get out ahead of this. So when the Fed talks about tapering and raising interest rates and reducing its balance sheet, the general market participants think they're going to get out ahead of this and squash inflation, and we're going to be able to return to normal. Now, that's mathematically impossible to happen, but right now that's what the general market believes. And once that narrative crumbles, which I expect to happen probably sometime in 2022, I think that's when we see silver and gold really start to move to the.
When you say seeing that start to crumble, what do you mean?
So basically, the Federal Reserve is between a rock and a hard place. They have to choose between fighting inflation and collapsing the markets, because the markets can't handle higher interest rates. So that what they're trying to do right now is thread the needle and give the perception or give the impression that they are fighting inflation, that they're going to get ahead of it. But I am highly confident that they're going to stay behind the curve on fighting inflation. And eventually the market's going to realize that. And as inflation continues to be higher than nominal interest rates, that's going to put pressure on the average everyday consumer, and the Fed's going to be forced to sacrifice the dollar. And that's when silver and gold and other commodities too tend to take off.
Is that because we're at that place where nobody, the stock market going to crash and we headed back to the Stone Ages, or are they going a la Venezuela or a la Zimbabwe? In what trajectory are they going? And you said the midterms are coming up soon. It almost seemed, I said to you before we were on air, almost seems like suicide if they raise rates. Are they just giving the appearance of it before we head towards a next ceiling or stage of inflation?
Well, making exact forecasts over short time frames is, it's tough, but I see this as the most likely scenario. Is eventually we're going to see about a 10 to 20% pullback in general equities due to the tightening policies of the Federal Reserve, and they can't have that. So that's going to force them to reverse course and open up the monetary spigots. And I think that'll be the point where market participants realize that the Fed has lost control and that inflation is here to stay. People are going to seek the safety of silver and gold and commodities at that point. So I'm looking for a 10 to 20% stock market correction at some point this year, Fed to reverse course on tightening, and that's going to be rocket for silver.
And that's the moment in time at which people realize, all right, we're going higher. And then that's when, as a result, there's an exit, a higher level of exit, perhaps out of savings. So then it moves more to equities, moves more to the stock market, it moves more to commodities, and you get that next, I guess you would say, pump in inflation or in assets. Is that kind of what?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And there's a lot of other dynamics in there as well. Once gold and silver begin to outperform general equities, generalist institutions are going to take notice of that. People who aren't necessarily gold bugs, they're just seeking performance. And if they see one asset class start to outperform others, they pile in, and it becomes a self-fulfilling mechanism. And that all lies ahead for silver. Do you think 2022 is highly likely to begin?
Jack, co-founder of Twitter and former CEO, he said hyperinflation is going to change everything. And it sounds like out there, especially from a guy who seems like out there. But when I rationally think about this situation where we're having legitimate, all of the signs that when we would talk about Venezuela or Zimbabwe, we're having, it's not something to laugh about, really, but what else can you do except for laugh at how insane it is? From labor shortages to supply chain shortages to food shortages to gas prices. Remind you that the stuff in Kazakhstan was set off because the government removed a price cap on gas, on oil, and it had pretty much an overnight move in the cost of energy and thus the cost of living, and people revolted. And we're seeing a lot of these types of things. And I used to think that it would be manageable a little more, but I don't know what they can do other than give the appearance they're going to do something and basically hope that the system doesn't crash. And I wonder, what do you think about that?
Yeah, Jim Sinclair calls it MOPE, or management of perspective economics. And basically it's trying to shift people's perception of the markets as opposed to, reality, because they can't alter reality. And, you talk about hyperinflation. I do give it about, roughly 30-40% chance of actually happening, hyperinflation. But to some people that may sound crazy, but I would think the burden of proof, or the burden falls on those who say we can't have hyperinflation, because it's a fact that on our current trajectory, if we continue the exact policies that we're doing, hyperinflation will be the result. So if you think we're not going to have hyperinflation, you think that the Fed is eventually going to do the right thing. And I'm not sure I see that happening, because to do the right thing would result in deflationary collapse that would, terrible in the short term. It's needed. It would be the cleansing that would be needed to rebuild from a solid foundation. But all the blame would fall on the politician, deflationary contraction. And they don't want that. So I think they're going to kick the can down the road as far as they possibly until there's a currency crisis. And I think a currency crisis is all but inevitable. And in such a currency crisis, silver and gold are historically the prime benefit 100% of the time, going back millennia.
I'm normally the one that asks the questions, not gives the answers. And I've listened to a lot of people. I've done a lot of these conversations, and for a long time, people have been saying, and it seems like when you hear it at first, it's like, all right. But when you say the burden of proof is on the people that don't think we're headed towards a crisis, I think objectively, regardless of where you stand, if you just ask are governments going to continue to print it? And the answer is yes. And so then the question is, what's on the other side of it? It's happening faster than I thought it was. I can't believe it's stuff's getting expensive, and you're seeing it everywhere. And I just wonder what's on the other side of that.
Yeah, two thoughts there is to the analyst out there who says, oh, currency crisis, that's never going to happen. I would ask them, well, how is it not going to happen? Explain to me exactly how is that not going to happen?
I guess the only answer people give, they give a couple. They say one, that eventually they'll tighten. You said, here's why you don't think that it will happen. And the other is kind of like a cliche, like they, never bet against the ingenuity of America. But I get it from a spiritual perspective of like the freedom that encapsulates in the, the ingenuity that encapsulates American entrepreneurialism. But you're talking about the entire system.
So right now, inflation is running about 7% using the government data, which is it's obviously much higher.
That's a lot. Would you have thought 24 months ago they'd be, was that 7? No way.
Right, exactly. So in that scenario, they would to squash that, they would have to raise interest rates to above 7%. So let's just say they went to 9%.
Jeez, I didn't even think about that. Oh my God, that would be disastrous. The housing market would collapse instantly.
Yeah, and right now the national debt, it's approaching 30 trillion. So for easy math, let's just say 30 trillion, and they raise interest rates to 9%. Well, 9% of 30 trillion, that's almost $3 trillion in interest expense that the government would have to pay to raise interest. $3 trillion. Well, they only collect somewhere around $4 trillion of taxes. That would consume the entire federal budget, just interest on the debt, almost. So that just goes to show the predicament. And
I guess that's why commies like 9% income tax, then, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I use the word predicament intentionally because problems have solutions. Predicaments have managed outcomes. And there's no solution to this problem. There's only different managed outcomes.
Before we continue, help us clicking that YouTube like button and subscribe now to our channel. This shows the algorithm that you valued this information. And it helps us spread that message. Sharing is caring. And now, let's continue.
Do you want to know one thing about crypto? I made over 3,000% in profit in a few weeks. Fact is, the traditional financial system, the traditional money system makes you poor, not rich. If you want to earn $500,000, $1 million, you have to wait until you're 50, 60, 70 in the traditional financial system, and you probably will still be broke. And you will be old. This is not a sexy combination, as you can imagine. But the question is, how can you start in crypto and make these profits? Where to invest? Where to start? My name is Gunnar and I'm from Germany, as you can hear, and things are a little bit different in Germany. More about that later on. The fact is, there are lots of different cryptocurrencies. It's a gigantic universe where beginners and professionals get easily lost. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. There are 7 key steps you need to follow to become successful in this market. You have to know them, and if you fail one of them, it's literally impossible to succeed in this market. Just an example, one of the key points is your exchange, and one of the biggest are, for example, Binance and Coinbase. These are trusted and well-established exchanges, but, and this is a big but, you won't find the super profitable coins on those exchanges. The unknown super profitable coins that get gigantic profits are not traded on those kind of exchanges. They are traded on much smaller insider platforms that are barely known. And I can tell you what those super secret exchanges are and why they are so profitable. And another super important thing are the right information sources. The point is, the internet is gigantic. There are hundreds and hundreds of YouTube channels, blogs, pages, and much more. And there are also market makers and influencers. For example, Elon Musk, he is not a crypto guy, but the moment he recommended Dogecoin, it went through the roof, to the moon, so to say. But why did he recommend it? Where did he hear it from? He didn't hear it from newspapers. And believe me, he is listening to someone. But you have to know who, and you have to react before he is reacting. This is really important. And these are only 2 of the 7 steps you have to follow in order to be successful in crypto. And if you want to know all of these steps in much more detail, and if you want to have a comprehensive checklist, here's what you should do. There is a link below this video. Click on this link and you will get the opportunity to subscribe to my channel. Click on the link and you will see a video where I explain the next steps. So see you soon. Click on the link now. I'll see you there.